live. Welcome, everyone, to Everything is Attitude, our special Friday night that we love to spend together, right, Rosemary? Welcome, Rosemary.
We absolutely do love to spend it together, don't we? We just can't get enough of each other.
I know. You'd think we get sick of each other at some point, but it hasn't happened in what, 15, 16 years yet? So,
No. So, do you want to talk a little bit about the subject, or do you want me to just dive in?
sure. But I mean, I'll briefly go over the subject, and then I think you have a story, right, to go along with this. So,
Yeah,
uh,
maybe.
maybe not.
I have lots of stories, actually.
So we talked about on the show, the Thursday show. I think this came up, right?
Yes, it did.
We talked a little bit about what people want from life, from the universe, from whatever's out there, versus what people need. And sometimes, oftentimes, that's not in alignment, right? What you want and what you need is not necessarily in alignment, and you don't always understand that what you want may or may not be what you need. And we use the example of, hey, I want $1 million. Everybody wants $1 million, right? But not everybody's going to get $1 million, and there's a reason for that. Why does your neighbor get it versus you? Well, that's not for us to know. That's for God and the universe to know, right? So that's the theme for tonight, to really talk about how life gives you what you need, not necessarily what you want. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people who think life has, or God or whoever it is that they're going to look at and blame, that they've been given a lousy hand, so to speak. When they were dealing the cards out, there are people who think, what a lousy hand I got. And it's true that some people do seem to have a greater challenges. Some people do seem to have lives that do have all kinds of issues and problems, whereas other people's lives seem to be on the surface, of course, because nobody knows quite what goes on behind. Once the door is closed, nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors. But there are people who seem to just sail along. They win things. If they buy a lottery ticket, they'll get something. If they buy a raffle ticket, they get something, and so on. And then there are other people who, no matter what they do, no matter how hard they work, it just seems that life has given them a really rotten hand to play, and nothing ever seems to go right. And yesterday we had a question from a viewer about, it says in the Bible, she actually quoted the Bible. It says in the Bible, ask and it shall be given unto you. And it's true, it does say that. But when that question was posed by whoever, whether it was Christ or whoever it was who said those words, ask and it should be given unto you, I don't think it applied to the material. I think it applied to the spiritual. We do tend to sort of get muddled up. There are also people who, pray and pray and pray, whether it's for $1 million or whatever it's for, whether it's for somebody's health or for their own health. People ask, for help continually all the time. And it does seem that God listens to some, and he definitely, it seems, does not listen to others. So does that mean that some of us are better than others? Does that mean some of us are more have more goodness in them, or deserve better than others? And we have to sort of stop and remember the reason, the absolute first and foremost reason why we choose to come back here to this earth and have this earth experience. And the reason that we choose to have this earth experience is so that our soul, our spirit, the light of the soul, can learn, can grow, can be nurtured, can be, can be given what it needs. And, so um, it makes me smile sometimes, because we hear of people all the time winning, not necessarily $1 million, but we hear of people who win the lottery. Sometimes they win even more than that. We hear of people winning the lottery. But I remember reading many years ago in a magazine, there was some guy who did an investigation into all of the people over the however many last 20 years who had won large sums of money. And he looked at them, he looked at their lives, he looked to see what they'd done with the money. And the majority, not everyone, but the majority of those people that had won that money had actually found that the money, in one way or another, had completely ruined their lives. Some had gone on to live the high life, and some had spent it all at once and then found themselves destitute. Some went into drugs. Or money isn't always the thing that brings contentment. In fact, money can often bring discontent, especially if you have it and then you lose it, or if you have it through a win of some sort. So we have to be really careful, Al, what we wish for, don't we? We have to just we have to really think. And, if we pray and pray and hope that we're going to win the $1 million, what do we actually think that is going to do for us anyway?
And we talked about this to have there's an ego side to it too, and a humility side to it too, right? I mean, if if we go back to the $1 million, if I ask the universe for $1 million, like, why do I deserve $1 million over another person that could win $1 million? Like, how do I know that my situation in life is deserving of that $1 million versus someone else? Like, it's presumptuous, and you have to be humble in what you ask, and what you expect too, right? We were talking about the expectation piece as well. If you do ask something of the universe, don't expect an absolute thing in return that you think is coming to you. If you ask for perfect health, and you eat like garbage, you're not going to get
I
perfect,
know.
right?
I
So,
know.
so
Exactly. Well, I think you will remember that I do suggest to some people that they make a card, a big. I tell people, go out there, get a big white card and lots of brightly coloured crayons. Make a border, a good inch to 2 inches around, all the way around the card, and colour it brightly colours. You can do abstracts, you can do stars, moons, flowers, whatever it is. But the border has to be brightly coloured. And then sit down quietly and think about 5 things or 5 changes that you want to happen in your life. And those 5 things might be a new car. They might be $5,000 in the bank. There might be, whatever it is that people want in their life. And then you take a black pen, a pencil, or a black crayon, and you write it in the center. You list 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't really ask for more than 5 things. 4 really should be the limit. And then you put it in bold right in the center of this white card, and then you put it up on a wall somewhere. So, and what happens is, like any picture that you might buy, you might go buy it a zillion times a day. Um, you might go buy it a zillion times a week, and occasionally it will catch your eye. But on a subconscious level, your subconscious registers with that card and registers with the things that you're trying to achieve. And people, that's not the same as saying, dear God, I want these things. It is actually a way of reminding yourself that you have the power to get these things if you are prepared to work for it. If you want good health, quit eating garbage. If you want money, start saving, even if it's only $1 a day or $1 a week. Somebody I know, a friend of, you know her too, she wants a puppy, and this puppy's, she went and checked to see how much they were. and oh gosh, it's just so, so expensive. I said, well, to put $5 away or $10 away every week, but put something away and make an effort to do it, and make sure you're disciplined enough to do it all the time. That card with all those things on it just reminds us that we need to be disciplined and we need to make an effort to achieve these things. If you want a new job, for instance, and actually somebody asked this question on the Thursday show. If you I asked for a new job. I've been praying and praying for a new job. Am I going to get it? I just went for an interview, so am I going to get this new job? Well, I don't know if you're necessarily going to get that particular job, but I know that if you look hard enough and long enough and you apply for jobs and you put energy and effort into it, it will reap benefits, and eventually you will get a job which you really want. But you can't just apply for 3 or 4 jobs and then shrug your shoulders. Well, I tried.
Yeah, one of the guys that we had on, Rich Bernardo, he said energy follows action, which I love as a saying. Energy follows action, and it's basically like you could put something out there for the universe all you want, but you have to help it out a little bit too. You can't just say, first of all, it can't be like this crazy notion that you expect to happen. You have to have humility in your ask, but you also, like you said, if you don't follow through on what you ask, like why would anybody give something to somebody if they know that you're not serious about it? If I asked you for $100 to invest in a company and then I went and sat down and put
I'd
my
say no.
but if I asked you for $100 and you saw me busting my hump going door to door and
I'd
like
say yeah.
right, so that's the difference. And it's the same thing when you ask of things in the universe, right?
I would sort of reverse the, he says action, sorry, energy follows action. I'm going to say that it's our energy, that if we decide, we use our energy and we use our power, that will drive us towards that action, which will then create more energy. So
Right.
it is, it becomes a self-perpetuating thing. Where does, it's like the chicken and the egg, which happened first, the
Yeah.
energy or the action? And does it really matter, as long as you are working towards your goals? But
I had
then
I had that same conversation with him. I said, well, which one comes first?
right. But then let's talk a minute about those things that we don't really seem to have control over, which is uh, perhaps health through genetics, or somebody plows into you, and that you're driving along perfectly normal and perfectly safely, somebody plows into you and creates havoc. Or there are many things that happen to us that we don't seem to have choices about, and you and people wonder, well, why me?
Right.
My tendency is to say, well, why not me? Why not you? Why? Because we are human beings and we are extremely vulnerable. But in those instances, and it's the same, as I was saying earlier on, we're being dealt this lousy pack of cards, right? We've just been dealt a lousy hand. Um, we have to remember that we came here again. I'll say this again. We came here for growth. We're here for a reason. We're not just here just life and have a box of chocolates and that it's going to be okay. So we're not. We're here for a reason,
Yeah.
and those reasons are to learn and to grow. And I hate myself for saying this, and I know other people will hate me for saying this, but unfortunately, it is very true that the harshest lessons and the most difficult lessons are the ones that we learn.
Yeah,
So,
you've mentioned that before. You don't learn a lot through the good times, right? You don't.
not a lot, and it's I don't know why we shouldn't, but you can learn to laugh through the good times,
Yeah.
but we always remember the teacher who was that, because as kids, most of us at some point, through our from the ages of 5 to however long we're still at school, most of us have that one teacher. My one teacher that I remember clearly, her name was Miss Crowfoot, and she was a terrifying human being.
That sounds like a fake teacher name, by the way.
No, that was actually her name. And and maybe she was bitter about the name. Maybe she just wanted to live up to it or something. I don't know. But she would stand at the top of the stairs. I went to an all girls school. It was too big school, 2 stories, and she would stand at the top of the stairs, at the head of the stairs, and during every sort of the bell would go, you'd have to go from one classroom to the other. So there was this big sort of like a huge community hallway, where students crossed, and if you were late for a lesson, or if you whatever you had to go to the bathroom and you were running late, you would walk fast, and she'd stand at the top of the stairs and she'd shout down, "You girl, stop running," and you just hear the voice. Just seeing her there, I would quake in my boots just seeing this woman there. And unfortunately for me, she was, in fact, for a couple of years, she was both my form teacher, which was dreadful, but she was also my math teacher as well, because that was her subject to teach. And I was never that good at math. It terrified me. It was one of those subjects that just would seize up, and even if I could have understood it, I couldn't, because I was frozen solid. And I remember once faking a pain in my side to get out of a math lesson. And I was sent to the school nurse. And this is a true story. And I ended up in hospital. I was 14 years old. I ended up in hospital with suspected appendicitis.
Oh,
And I was obviously so terrified of this woman that I had, it's a mind over matter. I created this situation. I was taken in an ambulance, and there was really nothing wrong with me at the beginning of it, but by the time I ended up in the hospital, I was suffering severe pain. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But the harshest lesson, and you see how I remember her, the harshest lessons
yeah.
that taught me: never pretend you're sick, because it'll happen. But the harshest lessons are the ones that we do learn the most. And although it does seem as if some people are sailing by wonderfully, you don't know what's going on in a person's mind, and you don't know how lonely they're feeling. You don't know what's going on with each person. But those of us who have the harshest lessons, I actually think, are probably the lucky ones, because I can only speak for myself on this. Through those hardships, through the meanness and the cruelty and all of the other stuff that I went through in life, that really taught me. And I can remember standing before a judge at a particular time a few years ago, and I remember saying, in this courtroom, I am grateful to my parents, who were certainly abusers in this day and age. That would have been absolutely considered abusers. They wouldn't then, because that was the norm of it in my neighborhood. That was it. But I thank God for my parents, because they taught me how not to be. So, you know, sometimes the harshest lessons and the cruelest lessons are the ones that we really need, or that our soul needs, to feed us, to teach us empathy, to teach us love, to teach us understanding, and so on and so forth. So when we're sending out our prayers, or when we're asking for things, it really does pay to pay attention to what it is you're asking for and why you're asking for it.
And it happens with, if I think of, coming out to Colorado. For me, I lived in New York my whole life. Didn't expect to ever come out here. I was really close to my father. My father passed away. I was on the fence about coming here. I don't know that I would have if my dad didn't pass away, and therefore I would have been able to leave him, or the kids would have been able to leave him. So sometimes it has this exponential effect. You don't realize how good it is long term, when in the moment it seems like, what is going on? Like, why was I dealt this really awful hand? And that could happen with someone you lose, or a job that falls through, or whatever it might be. You don't know what the next thing is that it opens up, because it seems really bad in the moment, but you don't know what the next thing it is.
Right.
It is that it's going to open up.
Right. Well, I get people coming to me all the time, as you know, wanting,
Yeah.
they want information about their future. They want information about relationships. They want information about their health, and so on and so forth. And, I always say to people, when they come to see somebody like me, you may not get what you want, but you always, if you're connecting with the spirit world, I believe, if you're connecting with God, whatever if you're connecting with that universal God force, you might not get what you want, but you always, always, always get what you need. And it might take you a while to see what it is that you need, or that you did need it that way. And I've had many people sort of be really disgruntled with me, about, well, I didn't want my grandmother, who I never knew, actually my great grandmother, who I never knew. I didn't want her. I don't know her. I wanted my girlfriend who was killed in the accident. Why are you talking about my great grandmother?
Yeah.
Going away really angry,
And
really disgruntled, and until all of a sudden, when he went to talk to his parents, and this guy had actually recorded the session, and he's so he goes. His parents are really excited. They know all about me. They've told him, if you're going to go to somebody, go to Rosemary. And they're sort of like on the edge of the seat waiting for him to come back, because they absolutely know that he's going to be thrilled. And when he walked through the door saying, well, that was a waste of time, it was just no good, and they were really shocked. So his mother said to him, look, come and sit down. This is typical of English people. Come and sit down and have a cup of tea, because a cup of tea solves everything, and let's just listen to the tape. And there I am on the tape talking with his great grandmother, Martha, who he didn't know and had never heard of and had never seen a picture of. He didn't even know she'd existed. But weirdly, strangely, the thing he couldn't understand was that she knew that he'd joined the Air Force or whatever. I can't remember what it was now, that he was wearing a new uniform. She knew that he'd renovated a new property. She knew so much detail about him. He couldn't figure it out, because he didn't know her. How did she know all of this about him? But he was still upset because he wanted his girlfriend. So his mother's listening, to the tape, and at some point, I'm saying, there's this lady. She's short, she's plump, she's wearing a long grey dress. She's got a straw boater with a black band, and etc. I'm describing, and she tells me her name is Martha. And this guy's mother, stop! Don't say another word. And of course, it was her great grandmother, and she went and found the old photograph album and showed it to him. Now, you ask, right, why, if I can talk to his great grandmother and she's going to tell everything about him, where's his girlfriend in all of this then? His girlfriend, who he was living with, who this house that he was renovating belonged to both of them. Why did the grandmother take over? What was that about then? Uh, it, he did not get what he wanted, his girlfriend. He got what he needed, his great grandmother. And the reason he got that was because he really hadn't fully believed that we don't die. He hadn't fully believed that we continue on after this life. Had I got his girlfriend and spoken to his girlfriend, he'd have been thrilled to bits for all of about an hour, maybe a week or something, and then he would have started to say, well, how did she know that? Maybe somebody told her. Maybe she read about the accident in the newspaper. Maybe, starting to doubt. But there's no way in this world that could possibly have known about his grandmother, because he didn't. So what he got was absolutely convincing, pure, simple, convincing evidence of a life after death. He then came back to me later, and we were able to talk to his girlfriend, but his family, everyone who knew him in the spirit world, they knew that if he had been given the girlfriend's information first, been able to talk to her first, he would have still been a doubting Thomas on some part of him, some level. He would have still been that doubting Thomas. But if they could swing it and get the great grandmother to come in here and blast him, to pieces, and really give this phenomenal evidence that you could not dispute at all, which his mother confirmed for him, everything that she'd said was absolute about herself was absolutely right. All of a sudden now he has a certainty.
It gives
He
him
doesn't
comfort, right? It gives him
yeah,
comfort,
he doesn't necessarily understand it, but he
which helps.
can't he
It helps
can't
with,
he
yeah.
can't dismiss it
Yeah,
anymore.
it helps with grief.
Yeah,
It comforts him,
yeah,
and that happens. We go back to like asking the universe of things or expecting something, and it not only when you put those things out there. Like give an example. A guy or a gal has a crush on someone, and they ask the universe, please just let me be able to marry that person, right? And all they're focused on is God answering their prayers, and in the interim, two or three or four people are passing through
they're
their lives
missing. They
that they're
are
missing, right?
totally
Because
missing.
they're so
You're
focused
right.
on what they want,
Yeah.
God is giving them what they need, maybe more than once, right?
And how often now does it happen that we ask for something, we so desperately want it, we so desperately think it's the right thing for us, and we get it, and it's miserable. It's not at all what we thought it was going to be. I mean, how often does that happen? So let's look at this, the recipe for our life, and, sort of figuring out getting what we need as opposed to getting what we want. So I think, the first ingredient I can think of is we need to trust that we actually don't know what we need.
That's a big one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we need a big TV. Can we live without it? Of course we can. We need a new sofa. Oh gosh, will the world come to an end if we don't get it? Of course it won't. We have to, but we do have to think about the things that we want, as opposed to the things that we actually need. And some people get really desperate, especially in relationships. They get really desperate, thinking that they can't live without this person. I've been down that route myself. When I discovered my husband was a naughty boy, even, I mean, all the time I knew him, he was a naughty boy, going off with this person or that person, and less than a week before we got married, he was uh, in our bed. I mean, not that we lived together at the time, but in the place that we were moving to once we were married, in my bed with a little student who, I don't know what she was thinking, and who had the nerve on my wedding day to present me with a his and hers bathroom towels. And I knew that she wasn't thinking his and hers, his and mine. She was thinking his and hers, his and hers. So it's just this is to remind you of that 5 minute little interlude that we had. But then, I found out that this was going on, and but then within the space of, I'm going to say, days, I became extremely ill and ended up in the hospital. 2 or 3 years down the track, having had a couple of major surgeries, being very weak, having all sorts of kidney issues, therefore issues with blood and so on and so all that sort of thing. When you are that sick, this what happened to me, and I know it happens to a lot of people. You think you can't manage because you become very fragile. You sort of lose confidence in yourself. You don't believe that. When I was certainly not in a condition to go to work, I couldn't work. So you sort of you actually believe, and people actually believe that they need this person in their lives, when the fact of the matter is that mostly you're way better off without them, because they're going to continue to cheat on you, they're going to continue to lie to you, or what have you. Not every time by any means, but that was my life. It's very difficult not to sort of think every man is a cheater, every man is a liar, and we have to be careful when we go into our next relationships to not judge that person on the experiences that we had before. But we do sort of become dependent, whether it's on our parents, whether it's on our friends, whether it's on our husband or boyfriend or girlfriend, and so on. And we had my friend Kay and her daughter on a few weeks ago, if you remember. And she was in a relationship that was dreadful, but I love him, she said. But I love him. And we can, because we are afraid of being by ourselves, we're afraid of being lonely, we're afraid that we're never going to find that one person in our lives that's going to make us happy and all of that. We can hang on to somebody, and we make the excuse. I made excuses. I can't leave because of the dogs. I mean, have you ever heard such a stupid excuse? I can't leave because of the dogs. Well, I can't leave because I'm sick. I can't leave because whatever. And and there's our the girl who came on the show, she couldn't leave because she convinced herself that he needed her, because he was a raging alcoholic, and so he needed her, so she couldn't. The truth of the matter is, all he needed was the bottle. That was it. And so part of this recipe is to not hang on to things that are doing you damage, no matter what they are. If someone or something or some situation that you're in is damaging you, whether it's damaging you physically, emotionally, spiritually, find the strength, find the power within you, because we all do have the power within us to take somewhat control of, of our situation.
Yeah,
Find somebody to help you.
yeah, Rosemary. It's about putting what you want over what you need, right? Placing more value over what you want versus what you need. And sometimes you really have to dig in a relationship. You may really want to be with somebody, or really want a boyfriend or a girlfriend. But if you search your soul, what you really need is not that person, or is not that situation. So those are the things that you really have to look at as far as want versus need. And sometimes it gets really challenging, because you can really want, like, the mind is a powerful thing, right? You could really convince yourself and really get enveloped and into whatever it is. People get obsessive about things because they want it so much, but and they lose what they really need. And that's when you start being unhappy. That's when you're miserable. That's when things are out of sync, and people say, I just don't feel right. Well, because you're looking for what you want, not what you need, right?
And you're looking to somebody else to give it to you, rather than giving it to
Right.
yourself, rather than understanding that you can actually give it to yourself. I don't want to make this all about relationships, but it does remind me of a time a few years ago when I met this guy, really handsome, seriously tall, handsome, not so dark, but nevertheless, like the wow factor, wow, that wow. And I was so stunned, uh, that this is how little I thought of myself. I was so stunned that he gave me his attention, and it was nice. It was really nice relationship. went out for drinks, we went out for dinner. He used to hunt, he brought birds to my house, I'd pluck them and roast them and all of that sort of thing. I mean, it was a really nice relationship as far as it went. And of course, I was dazzled by this gorgeous hulk of a thing. And as most women would be, and some men would also be thinking about it. But I was on, and he'd call me at night before, before bedtime. He could call to say good night and what have you. And he had two children, two boys, from his previous marriage. And I was on the phone with him this particular time, and we were talking and happy and nice and so on. All of a sudden, I hear him roaring in the most aggressive voice to his children, who were only like 7 and 8 years old, to stop that noise and go to bed. Now, I think it reminded me somewhat of how my father used to speak to us. It's like the army sergeant thing, you know. And I could not get it out of my head. And I thought, as nice as he is to me, if he's mean to his kids, do I really want this relationship? And it made me stop and think, not about how he looked, not about how he treated me in the short term, because I didn't know him that well, but I started to look at how he treated his children. In that one moment, it gave me insight. And in that one moment, and there's always a moment for all of us, I think, when we meet somebody, there's a moment, or there are several moments where we might think there's a little seed of doubt. Something happens, or somebody says something, there's a little seed of doubt. Not just in sort of relationships with, men and women, but, in all relationships, there's a little seed of doubt. And we should pay attention, because that's our instinct kicking in right there to say to us, stop and think. Do you actually, you might want the gorgeous hunk, the body and all the rest of it, but do you really want a relationship with someone who, what do you need? And what I decided I needed somebody who was kind. So if he's short and fat and wearing glasses, but he's a kind and a gentle person, I'd rather have that than the tall big Hulk. Of course, I'd rather have the tall big Hulk who's nice and kind and loving and all that as well. But you know what I'm saying. There's is a point, whether it's in your work, or whether it's with in relationships, whether it's within your own family. When as we get older, we have siblings that we deal with. What is it you need, and also what is it that you don't need? And I think going into this mixing bowl is that taking that moment to figure out what, even if you don't know what it is that you do need, you do know what you don't need. And you don't need aggression. You don't need somebody who is mean. You don't want someone involved with your children or with your family, or even just around you. I personally don't want anyone in my space who isn't kind. I don't like, there are two things that I will not tolerate. I just will not tolerate. One of those things is meanness, and the other thing is when somebody is unjust. Those two things just get to me. So if I find someone who is mean or unfair, I tend to move them out of my space, or I'll move out of their space, whichever it is. So I think paying attention to what you don't need might come before what you do need.
And that's probably an easier one in some way, right?
Yes,
for people to realize.
so. Yeah.
um,
So. Because we don't always know what we need until we get it, do we?
Right. Exactly. So we have a couple comments.
That was my next question. Let's have the comments.
So we have someone here from the outback of Australia, a town called Goondy Windy, which is a really cool town. Gondi Windy. That's pretty cool. Jeff says hi. Um, uh, Natasha, who is from Australia, she says, "Why is that rotten hand drawn?" Which we talked a little bit about. Karen was on briefly.
Well,
She,
let me just ask that. You already had the answer, because the answer is the rotten hand is the one that's going to teach you the most.
yep, yeah. Like it or not, right? You could kick and scream
Yeah,
about it.
I'm afraid it's true. Yeah, I'm afraid
You
it's
can
true.
kick and scream about it, but uh,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
I've done just as much as anybody else. But that's the reality. That's what inspires growth.
yeah.
Um, uh,
Said Karen.
Karen was here briefly and said she had to go to work, but she's going to come back and listen later.
Okay.
Um, there's this name here. If I could pronounce this name, it's Niibaagezokwe. This is the longest name I think I've ever seen.
I am going to take the okay right out of the middle there and say hello, okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then the last name is Gundnabobat.
All
So
right then.
that is some name.
We love the fact that whoever you are, we cannot pronounce who you
I
are.
mean, it's a great name. To have
We do love the fact that, and it would be great if people could tell us where in the world they're coming from. The person who is from the outback of Australia, do they have anything to say to us? I mean,
yeah, that's the one that says, why is that rotten hand drawn?
oh,
Um,
okay.
and then
Haven't you been listening?
and then we'll call this person okay. Says this is discipline is what I need to work on.
Oh, don't we all? Don't
Yeah,
we all?
exactly. Um, and then Maggie came in, said gardening at 9 a.m. Just put everything away for tomorrow. I love gardening, right? Rosemary, you do too.
I
Uh,
do. I
she
do.
says,
Big gardener.
I believe everything I've been through has been a learning path. Like it or not, I needed to learn through it all and pull myself up and out. Some things I'm still working through, but I think I have to learn to put the right trust in the right direction and not be so gullible.
Yeah, it's hard though, because when you're soft and you're a gentle person, you're a kind person, you do want to believe people, so you are naturally more gullible. Is this the Maggie who sent me the chocolates, by the way?
It's the Maggie that's always on.
If she
Maggie.
can, she can tell me if she sent me the chocolates. That would be great.
Okay.
And if not, why not? It's I want.
and
Um,
and Nettie is on. She said hi there. Just came on.
hi. And
And that's it. We have a bunch of reactions. And Jeff was on there somewhere. He said hi, Rosemary and Al. So Jeff was on as well. We have to have Jeff
what?
back on. It's about that time to have Jeff back on too, right?
I totally think so. Do we have any comments?
Nope. That was it as far as comments went from everybody here. So
Okay. So what is the recipe then? We've got the mixing bowl. Okay, here it is.
I
So
think I think one is humility and understanding that it's not all about you, and you don't necessarily get exactly what you want, right?
hold on a minute. Are you telling me that it's not all about me, Al?
That
Is that
can't be
what-
right. That can't be right. Let me take that back.
I so wanted it to be all about me.
But there are so many moving parts in the universe, and it's so complex. If you think that you understand that you know what you need, you're wrong right out of the gate. You're wrong.
So I look back at the things that I've sort of had experienced. I'm thinking of miscarriages, 4 before I had my daughter, 3 or 4 after I had her. I mean, I remember sitting on the bedroom floor weeping, weeping and weeping. Why me? Why me? Why me? And actually, and lots and lots and many other experiences that I've had, but actually, every single one of those painful experiences has allowed me to really understand when people come to see me and they come with all sorts of issues and they have all sorts of problems. I It's not that I am just talking about what I think. they feel. I know how they feel because I've gone through the same pains, the same hurts, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, did I want those children? Of course I did. Did I cry my eyes out every time I lost another baby? Of course I did. Am I grateful that it happened? Of course I am, because those things taught me. They taught, I when I talk to a woman or even a family who have lost a child, it's not the same once the child is born and then grown somewhat. I know that. But I can somewhat empathize. It's not just a question of being able to sympathize, it's a question of being able to empathize. And every time we suffer pain or heartache, I think honestly, it's so often because we need that growth inside of us, and I am so grateful for my life. I don't think there's one part of my life that I can honestly say that I regret, because even when I've not done the right thing, even when I've missed an opportunity, it's come back around and I've been able to find that opportunity, or I've been able to work towards making my life what it is. And I thank God for, if I always say, if I had to do this all over again, in other words, if I had to go through every situation that I've had in my life all over again, would I do that? I would not do it except for my daughter and my grandson. I would not do it necessarily willingly, but if it meant that I could be the person I am today with the same understanding, the same empathy, and the same caring, and the same attitude, I would do it. I wouldn't necessarily do it willingly, but I would do it. So I'm urging everybody out there who has those poor me moments, who have those why me moments, who have that why is my neighbor, spending all that lovely money and she's walking around with gold and jewels and all the rest of it on. Why do some people have it good and some people don't have it good? Don't you know It's hard to be grateful when things, or when awful things happen, but I really firmly believe that God only gives us what we can handle. And I firmly believe that when God takes something from us, he always, always, always gives us something back. You just have to be able to open your eyes to see it. And that's where I think humility comes in, isn't it, Al? That we need that humility in order to understand that,
It's not all about us. It's
it's
not
not
all.
all about us, and no matter what we're going through, other people are often going through way worse than that.
And what you said before too, you could think somebody's life is perfect and they have all the money and everything's going well, but you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, or how happy or unhappy they are, or do they go home and they have a really sick child, or like you just don't know
You
what's going on.
don't know, or are they feeling lonely inside? I mean, I've been to, and I'm sure we've all done this. You go to a party and you put on a smiling face, and everybody would testify, absolutely, 1,000%, no question, you're having a good time. Rosemary's having a good time. Look at her, she's smiling, she's laughing, she's having a really great time. But inside, you can be a shriveled little thing. You can be really feeling really, really unhappy and miserable and lonely. And people can't see that necessarily about a person. So be careful not to judge. So that goes into the pot as well. No judgment of other people. And I think a really big thing, Al, I don't know what you think, but I think this is a really, really big thing, to not compare.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Right? Stop comparing.
In the age of Facebook and social media and all
Oh,
that, it's
oh
even
yes.
worse, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if you can, stop comparing your life, which might be awful at the moment, with somebody who seems to be living the high life and having fun and so on. because you do not know what goes on behind closed doors. You do not know what other people are suffering, and you do not know how many people who are out there in this world who are struggling like crazy and putting on a brave face. So they might look to you to be having a nice life. They might be, dripping in diamonds and pearls and all the rest of it. But that does not mean that they are satisfied inside. It does not mean that they are fulfilled inside. And a lot of people who are able to buy, I mean, I can remember when I went to Hong Kong, I was having an awful time personally. However, Hong Kong is an amazing place. You can go out shopping until 3 or 4 in the morning. There are lots of markets going on all over the place. So you never actually have to stay home and face yourself or be miserable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I had the money, at that time, not millions, but I had the money to go out and shop and buy things, so I could distract myself. And a lot of people do that, don't they? They find distractions. You find people who are shopaholics. You find people who, all they do is play bridge every day of the week, most hours in a day, or whether it's bridge or whatever it is. You find people who distract themselves from facing the fact that they really do have awful lives. So we have to be very careful not to judge and to not compare somebody else's seemingly wonderful life with our seemingly not so wonderful
And
life.
also, Rosemary, we had this conversation a week or two ago about comparing even what your own experiences have been, right? So you may have had a great job at one point in your life, and you're expecting or regretting or hoping for that same great job instead of just focusing on what you need and what you truly need. And you forget about the fact that the great job, you work 70 hours a week, and
I
you
know.
remember just that you had a lot of money at that time, right? So
But you missed out on your kids, or you missed out on a great relationship
that's
or something.
exactly right. Yeah. So you got to really be careful about the comparisons in your own personal life, comparisons to others. You have to have humility in what you're asking and expecting. You have to trust, like you said, is a huge one. Trust that uh, what that God knows what's right, and the universal energy will give you what you need versus what you want.
Yeah.
Really,
There's another thing that really needs to go into the pot, and it's something that we do not do often enough. I think it's fair to say that most of us do not do that often enough. My daughter, a few days ago, she sent me a very short video of my grandson on his skateboard flying down the street of New York City. It was like a 30-second something or another. And as he's flying down there, he's going, woohoo! His blonde curls all over the place. And of course, he's my grandson, so I know how gorgeous he is. However, I said to Samantha, my daughter, can I put this on Instagram? And she said, you can do it, Mum, but it really, what does it have to do with the topic? This is my daughter who knows that everything in my life has to do with the topic. The topic being that I'm a spiritual medium and I talk to people who have passed. But she said it doesn't fit. Why she would much prefer it if I sent out spiritual quotes and all that. And I'm good at that. I'm happy to do that. But what is it about my grandson that does not fit into that part of my life? Because uh, it's about blessings. And so into this pot, and I actually did put it on Instagram. It lasts, you blink and it's gone, but it's a joy. It's such a joy. And I actually, the little, the tag that goes next to it, I actually talked about, God gave me this blessing. I can't remember exactly. God gave me the blessing of my grandson. He is my darling boy, anyway. And did you count your blessings today? Was the tag. And I'm asking people not to tell me if they did, but just asking them, did you actually count your blessings today? Because most of us we often get so focused on what is going on that's wrong, or that
or
we're
what or
being
what we
held,
or what we want, right?
or what we want versus what we need. We're often so focused on, other people get it, why can't I? That sort of thing. Or why am I dealt a lousy hand? But the truth of the matter is that every single one of us, no matter what your situation is, and there are some very dire situations that people have to go through, you can find, if you search for them, you can find some blessings. I mean, for instance, those of you who are watching this show, count this as a blessing for the day, simply because we're talking about something that is so important, and it's only a small thing, it's just a little thing, but we're hoping to inspire people, right, Alan? I'm hoping that at least one or two people listening will be inspired by what we're saying.
Yes.
Count your blessings. I mean, I know with Al, you would count your blessings, and there are three of them right under your roof. And then there's your wife, and then there's your sisters, and then and on and on. That's before you even start. And even if the kids are driving you crazy, they're still your blessings at the end of the day.
Without a doubt. Yep. Without a doubt. Yep. And my
So,
dog barking in the background.
yeah, the dogs. I forgot the dogs. So, you know, in with that, in with those ingredients, in that mixing bowl. If you could, and I just would emphasize this to everybody out there, whatever the topic, whatever your life, however good it is, or however bad you think it is, you know, count your blessings. And one of those blessings, actually several of those, more than I can count blessings in my life, I count as blessings the bad stuff as well as the good stuff. I count as blessings the pains and the heartache. They are the gifts we do not want. But when they are given to us, you know, they strengthen us. They help us to find ourselves. They help us to look within ourselves and see the strength that we do have. It's the gift that we do not want, but I believe, I'm certainly grateful for mine. I'm certainly grateful for the pain. I'm certainly grateful for all of those tears that I've cried over the years. I'm sure I'm going to cry more tears before it's my turn. But I am truly grateful for those. So I count those as blessings in my life, as frustrating and as hurtful as they can be. And I think it's about your attitude. Here we go. It's about our attitude. Do we have an attitude of positively accepting, understanding, and making the most of what we have, and looking for and searching for the blessings within? Or do we have an attitude which is, well, why me, and why did it happen to me? And I can hear some people, even watching, I can hear them saying, well, it's all right for her because she's sitting there in a nice house and all the rest of it. But no, don't do that, because you don't know what goes on behind my door, and I don't know what goes on behind your door. But you do have blessings if you search for them, if you have an attitude. And sometimes it's, especially when things are really bad, it's so hard to have a positive attitude. You somehow have to grit your teeth and just work at it and work at it. But I promise, if you do, you will count your blessings and you'll be amazed at how many blessings you do actually have.
Yes. To quote Jeff again, as we have attitude of gratitude, right?
An attitude of gratitude. Do we have any more comments?
No, I think that's it. We have one more from Maggie. Oh, I had a teacher who was a Holocaust survivor. I learned so much from her. And one time, some boys were making fun of her accent in class. She showed them her arm with the numbers tattooed there and asked if they knew what it was, then proceeded to tell them to respect their life and others, teaching us all lessons beyond math.
Wow,
After that,
that's
I had liked her, but I loved her after that.
nice. That's a nice lesson. Again, no matter what we are going through, it was put to me this way many, 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 many years ago. I was very young at the time, just starting out on my career. And someone said to me, no matter how low you get, no matter how bad your life is, no matter what is going on with you, no matter how low you feel that you've sunk, listen very carefully, because there's always someone knocking down below.
Yep. Somebody always has a worse.
Always someone
Yeah.
lower, worse off, more despairing, more desperate than you are. So count your blessings. I think that's it, Al. I think
I think it is.
we're good to go. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'd like to say to everybody out there, thank you very much for watching. If you want to know more about Al at alpasano.com. If you want to know more about our show, this evening's show, Everything is Attitude, it is info. Look, there he is putting it up. Info at everythingisattitude.com. If you have a subject that you'd like us to talk about, if you would like to be on our show, you don't have to be on camera, promise. You can just, if you just would like to be on our show, you can talk, or you just write in what it is, the subject that you want to talk about, or your situation. We'll do our best to help you. If you want to know more about me, you can email me, Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com, and ask your questions that way. We will be here next Friday, 6:00 Standard Eastern Time, which basically means New York time. We shall be here on Thursday morning. Every Thursday morning we do the YouTube show, The Spirit World Sees All. And we should be in and out all over the place, won't we? We'll be doing all sorts of things. So keep, looking at us on Facebook, on Twitter. You'll find me on Instagram. Believe it or not, my Instagram account is the Rosemary Altea. There's nothing like feeling special, is there? The Rosemary Altea. As far as I know, there's not another one, but that's how we got into Instagram. So if you want to know more about us, more about the show, more about what we're doing, if you want to know more about our online courses, online classes, we are thinking of taking another new class as soon as we get, I think, 2 or 3 more students applying. We're going to start another class. Do we really want to do it? Because it's real headache at times, but we love it just the same. I have such a lovely bunch of students, including my Nettie, who I hope is still watching. So if you want to know any more about what we're doing, if you want to know more about my books, my cookbook, I don't know, can't think of it. My latest book is, what is it? A Walk in the Clouds. I love that movie with Keanu Reeves, but it inspired me a little bit to title my book. So you can find us all over the place, right, Al?
Yes.
So thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed the topic. We're hoping again next week to have a guest. I also do want to invite Jeff back because he's such a great guest. It's got to be 6 months since he was on, so we'll talk about him. In the meantime, until I see you all again, have a very, 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 very blessed day.